So probably many of you familiar with Ananta, and this is quite an expected and highly anticipated game which is going to be released I believe in 2026. It's already received quite a lot of controversy, but it is what it is. When we're talking about some big projects, they are met by some people with a lot of hype and with high expectations. By others it's not really that way, and quite an opposite, to be honest. But anyways, it's not the main reason for this video. So if you're not familiar with this game and if you don't believe that it's actually quite expected one, well, here is the number of already pre-registered players, and it's 15.5 million. You may say, well, this is probably not that much. It's actually really a lot, even with the fact that the date for this game, when it's going to be released, isn't announced yet. So they presented their game on TGS, people were able to play with it, to try this out. There are a lot of showcases of the gameplays and so on and so forth. But this is not the main aspect. We're going to talk specifically about the company and the publisher which is standing behind this game. Yeah, here we're talking about NetEase Games. Maybe some of you know this company, and maybe some of you familiar with its not really bright past. Anyways, the developer team is located in China, and this is an A-Train. They're also developing this game with the help of Montreal studio, which is going to help with optimization with the game and pushing it to global, let's say. But I found an interesting video here from Below News, which saying about NetEase, about its history, what kind of relationships they had with different companies, and how it actually ended up being. I found it interesting for a little bit of speculation and kinda maybe lowering expectations for some of you, maybe being a little bit aware about it. It's not to bring some fuel into fire or something like that, just I believe, because me personally, I had an experience with this company and the other game, and the outcome wasn't really that pleasant. I'm going to speak about it later in this video. But anyways, yeah, I find it interesting just to see what kind of past this company had,
I hate
just
being
to
the bearer of this news,
be
but
familiar
here we
with
go.
it.
I'll begin with a quote from February. Here it is. I feel like we are in a stronger position now. NetEase has clearly been evaluating their portfolio. They decided our game is the one they want to focus on. So those words were said by Greg Street. He's a marine biologist turned Age of Empires developer turned World of Warcraft developer turned Riot MMO lead, who then, with the backing of NetEase, went and made a new studio, one that would be making.
And yeah, an interesting fact that they actually stopped the relationships with the Blizzard, so no money from NetEase anyways. And yeah, when we're talking about NetEase, basically they were investing quite a lot of money into different companies and development of different games, which actually ended up being not released, but we're going to again hear it from the author of this video.
Pixel Castle fears that they would lose funding for their upcoming MMO, which is called Ghost. Now, at the time, we talked about it on this channel because we saw NetEase pulling out of many other companies and essentially rug pulling loads of studios that they made real financial commitments to. And now, fast forward to 9th of October 2025, NetEase is no longer funding the project. Remember, Greg Street literally said, they decided our game is one they want to focus on, and now it's very obviously, well, not the case. And so,
well, an interesting fact that people are kind of thinking that their project is going to be like a safe one, but it's also the thing about decisions of the publisher and potential perspectives and kind of different models in this game, if they're going to receive any benefits from the project or not really. Maybe something is going to change in terms of relationships. Maybe they're going to find something more perspective or something like that. And this is also kind of a competitive market overall, and not always easy to, get your own place under the sun, let's say.
This is another studio
So
formed by
you
veteran
can be
talent,
sure about
with
it.
promise of support from a major industry player, and now another company put at risk, all because of the changing whims of the C-suite. So you understand what's going on. Greg Street was the lead systems designer at Blizzard for WoW. He stayed there until 2013, and audiences loved him, sometimes hated him, but for the same reason, because he actually engaged with the community on feedback. Very active developer. But then Riot asked him to lead their MMO. He spent years working that MMO and, well, it's quite obviously at this stage, no MMO. I wonder how many times that thing's been reset. Of course, in 2023, he left Riot and he revealed Fantastic Pixel Castle. This would be a first-party NetEase studio, and they would build a new AAA fantasy MMO called Ghost. The plan was actually smart. It was to take advantage of the talent of Greg Street and his collaborators to basically assemble a crack squad of hand-picked devs, but then to do something smart, and that is to be as efficient as is possible. The reasons why are quite obvious. MMOs can get extremely expensive. They can go wrong. So
Yeah, and this is topic not only about MMOs. Obviously, they might be one of the most expensive projects overall and require quite a lot of investments. And without this investor, you won't be able to finish and release the game. But when we're talking right now about the topic of gaming industry in general, I have a feeling that it's becoming more and more competitive, and people are really focusing a lot on making and bringing a lot of monies into their projects, into their game development. They're focusing on graphics, they're focusing on visual aspects, they are hiring actors and so on and so forth, and spending just millions and hundreds millions of dollars onto creating the game. And the question is that exactly what people are wanting to receive? Is that exactly what players are expecting to get at the end? Which I'm a little bit concerned, because later on we see quite a lot of games being released and made by gamers, by players, not in a good way. Quite opposite, with a lot of critics and bad ratings and really negative reviews. So I have a question in general, what's going on in the industry and how it came so. But I believe this is another topic for discussion. Anyways, we have what we have. I believe we, as viewers, as the consumers, may only provide our personal point of view, share opinions, and kinda let people know that maybe this is something wrong, maybe this is not the main aspect of the game, and most importantly is that we want to play the games which we are going to enjoy, and we're paying for this game not to just see cinematics or actors playing something, but actually for the game which you're going to play and enjoy. Maybe that's the case.
The promise here was very simple: a small team working remotely that, when they needed scale, would take advantage of outsourcing. And for the first few years, things actually looked good. There were transparent communications that kept people engaged. Milestone prototypes were shown off publicly. They were designing and producing zones. Those would get revealed. Player feedback was shaping the development. And actually, over the last few months, things really got faster. Classes started being showcased. There were streamer-backed marketing tests, and all of that seemed to be a show of strength. Right
it's
after
like
Greg
normal
Street
process.
said, "We're the game they chose." Obviously now, that looks a little bit different. And now for
yeah, I mean, not like what it's supposed to be, but again, I was already saying it in one of the videos that actually about developers, they have kind of a schedule that they need to follow, and sometimes this schedule might change a little bit, and the publisher is going to insist to actually move the dates and do certain steps faster, or do and provide already an actual and some kind of a working product earlier than it's been expected, and it usually ends up being not really that good, so it's kind of questionable.
October toast. Fantastic Pixel Castle's time as a first-party studio within NetEase Games is coming to an end. He goes on in the letter to thank his team and the fans, but he painted a dire picture. NetEase had been helping the team find a new publisher, but they just had not had any luck. And without new funding soon, well, the studio...
I'm not surprised. Why is it the case?
But here's the worst thing. We knew this would be...
Did they even try?
Coming. We actually did. Bloomberg reported in August that Fantastic Pixel Castle were facing difficulties. NetEase had reviewed the studio's financing, and it turns out the $100 million total budget they had planned was one that they could no longer support. Now, Street makes something very clear in this. It's that he's willing to compromise if it means he can save the studio. And the team has clearly been working on an exit strategy here. He claimed that there's a Helldivers or Elden Ring Night Rain version of the game, a different take in the game that would need half the budget and is already half completed, or even that Fantastic Pixel Castle themselves could be slotted into an existing studio, that they could work on any project as a development team. One of the things he wants to do is save his squad. Both of these were presumably offered to NetEase. Obviously, neither were accepted. So here we are. 2 years after being founded to deliver an MMO, Fantastic Pixel Castle had the rug pulled out, and they are far from the first. Obviously, they couldn't deliver a project that massive in a 2-year time frame. Now they will not get the chance, at least under NetEase. If that sounds familiar, you would be right, because NetEase have pulled this exact same trick many times over the last few years. NetEase is the developers.
They're the guys basically who have money once again, so it's for them to decide which projects they want to invest, but it's not a really good thing to do. I mean, it's kind of shady a little bit, even a dirty move. Because obviously, when, for example, you're seeing the game which you started to work on from the very beginning, and you're kind of promised them that you're going to give them money and you're going to sponsor them till the end, but after all, you're finding something which is a little bit more promising or already at the final phase or something like that, and you're saying like, sorry guys, but you're not going to receive money, we're moving forward. Not a good look.
It's been one of the defining stories of the last few years. So they spent 2020 onwards offering funding and studio leadership positions to veteran developers. This basically meant BioWare, 343 Industries. God, I think a lot of people want to escape the hell of whatever 343's been. Also Capcom and many other studios. And the pitch was simple. Get free from the constraints of IP. Escape stagnant corporate leadership. Make the games that they wanted to make. And then NetEase started closing these studios before they had a chance to release anything. This, to be clear, is not a case of, oh, this studio's really, really late, where's the game? No. As an example, Worlds Untold operated for a year. Jar of Sparks got 2 years. Ocus Studios released Visions of Mana, and NetEase then fired all of the staff during its release week. What's all this stuff about? Well, it's quite simple. It's about return on investment. Analyst Daniel Ahmad pointed something out here.
Investments, and they're not just giving a chance, because why they need to do it? Once again, not a really nice movement.
This is part of a wider trend that Chinese game publishers like NetEase invested heavily overseas. And they haven't exactly generated significant returns from that. Or maybe that they regret some of the bets that were placed during the boom times. Of course, a boom time that many of us have criticized on the internet. The expectation is perhaps that these studios would have something ready to ship, or at least they would show market potential. Of course, expecting that for a MMO within 2 years is absolutely insane. Now,
an interesting thing, it's just my thought, I didn't really look through statistics, but I have a feeling that in many cases these companies, they are able to receive more value and more benefit from the global audience who are going to invest into their games and pay for them rather than the Chinese market. So, I mean, their desire to go to global is kind of understandable, I guess. But here is an interesting thing. Like, they're going to global, and in many cases, they even don't listen to the global audience at all whatsoever. And again, I had such an experience with one game, which is called Lord of the Rings: Rise to War. It's a strategical game, also published by NetEase, and the whole idea that they were focusing a lot on a Chinese market as well and Chinese audience. So the moment when they decided to change everything, it basically turned out being a complete disaster for majority of the player base of this game. When they released an update, which was like the version 2.0, where they basically changed the whole game, and they provided such changes which nobody really asked for, at least from the Western audience. And it ended up being that a lot of players started to leave this game. I was playing this game like from the very beginning, from the very release of it, and it was like what, 4 or 5 years ago, I don't really remember, but it's not the case. The whole idea that me personally, I all stopped playing it, and there were a lot of players who left this game, who requested refunds for this game, and at the end, not that long ago, like a couple days ago, we received news about this game that is going to be shut down in the upcoming couple months or half a year, something like that. And they just basically provided us a fact that another game is going to come to its end. It worked for like 5 years in total, but the moment when they realized that they actually receiving not a benefit, but they're losing money, they decided, okay, we're not going to support this project anymore, so here we are.
You could read Fantastic Pixel Castle's moves as trying to prove potential here. Just look at what they've been doing, showcasing classes, doing creator marketing. Quite clearly a chance to show NetEase there was value, that there was engagement, but also clearly it didn't work. But there is a specific NetEase aspect to this story. You see, NetEase has always denied one thing, that thing being that their actions are linked to a systemic withdrawal from non-Chinese first-party studios. And a lot of this comes to, a fun guy. Because sources told GamesBeat something a little bit different to what the NetEase line was. And that is that the company's CEO and founder has basically lost faith in a plan to increase NetEase's investment outside of China. And this led to something big. So here's the deal. Simon Zhu, he was the president of Global Investments and Partnership, and he stepped down in April. He is pivotal to this. One of GamesBeat's sources said, quote, everything that NetEase's Zhu touched were now going to be unwound. All investments, all.
Trailing 12 months of gaming revenue is 11.7 billion. That's a lot. One question is whether the world conditions like the rise of Chinese AAA game development could impact other firms in China and cause them to pull back as well. Yeah, I mean, so once again, they're kind of prioritizing the Chinese market, and from one point of view, it's kind of understandable, but I don't know. It's like really weird.
Holdings. And now that Fantastic Pixel Castle's funding has been pulled, it really does seem that the quoted word everything is accurate. The last time we covered this, we framed it around a bunch of single-player studios, like
no team is safe.
Staff. And, well, we thought there was a reason why they were especially at risk, because they didn't fit NetEase's interests. All those games that we mentioned, the ones cancelled over the last few years, they were pretty much all single-player narrative games. Things never able to generate.
So, a little bit about Ananta. Anyways, it's conspiracy theory.
Marvel rivals money. Just consider the math. 2 years of development funded, maybe 2 to 3 to 4 more to finish a big MMO. And also, American wages compared to Chinese wages. And then think about the potential returns. A single-player game from a new team? Compared to NetEase's financial bread and butter, just makes absolutely no sense. So in a way you could see the logic. Kill all those single-player RPGs, invest in more multiplayer stuff. Like
Why? I mean, and still we have something like that. I can say for sure that even for multiplayer stuff, it's not always working. I mean, they're working for quite some time.
MMO called Ghost, but as time went on, the picture changed.
But at the end, we know the outcome.
T-0 Entertainment. NetEase walked away from funding their game. Their game was a third-person multiplayer action game about taking on kaiju. NetEase's North American head of publishing called it, quote, great market fit. But obviously, that's not the complete quote, is it? Because he also said that they were sorry that they couldn't, and this is the quote, get you there in the time needed to. And this is why Greg Street said something back in February, that the Ghost was the one they wanted to focus on. It turns out that he should have used a different word, that word being scrutinize. That's perhaps why he had survived all the cuts thus far. But after scrutinization, NetEase were not happy. Maybe they weren't willing to wait until a full game would come out. Now, for the rest of their portfolio, things are up in the air, and I've got to say, there's some projects that I know.
We had many friends and fans reach out to us out of the concern. After responding to each of them, I want to make a more formal statement that Anchor Point Studios hasn't been affected by any studio closures, and we're still full steam ahead building our game. Interesting, okay.
As an example, Anchor Point and Rebel Wolves. Rebel Wolves, you may know more. They're some of the ex-CD Projekt Red people. Well, back in February, they said they were safe.
Safe, of course.
Fantastic Pixel Castle said they were safe.
Yeah.
Now, I think they're probably safe. In the case of Rebel Wolves, their founders do own the majority of the company, and they've got a separate publisher. That's brilliant. So, you know, it's a bit of a minority investment from NetEase's perspective and doesn't confer as much risk. But even for them, if they've perhaps banked on future funding, then that could go wrong. As for the other studio, Anchor Point, it was founded in 2023 by NetEase across 3 global locations. So to be real, it does seem like they're also on the clock. You may be wondering what happens next then, because companies like Grasshopper Manufacture or, of course, Quantic Dream you'll certainly know, David Cage, funny fella, lots of stories. Well, they were purchased outright by NetEase. Are they also on the clock, to get that revenue in? In theory, NetEase could sell those companies on, or even back to their original owners. But here's the question. It's 2025.
Who's going to buy them?
Who would even buy them? Back to the focus of the video, though. Fantastic Pixel Castle. They could, in theory, find new funding. It is not an impossible thing. But here's what Greg Street himself said.
It's really difficult.
Quote, in the current market environment, very few deals are getting made. For any game, let alone something on the scale of an MMORPG. Yeah, so that boom that NetEase invested in, was a bit of a splurge built on hype. The factoid I always wheel out for this one is that World of Warcraft Shadowlands, widely regarded to be one of the largest misfires in that whole game's history, was also the fastest selling PC game of all time.
The first day, 3.7 million units had sold through globally. That's insane. Blizzard's own Diablo 3 sold through more than 3.5 million copies. That's pretty much impressive.
Because there was a big lockdown, and that was an MMO that was being sold.
Yeah. A lot of people are hungry for some good MMOs, and this is the other question, and this is another problem. Like, they're missing quite a lot of games. I mean, people are waiting for something finally, which is going to involve them into this game and, to play, to enjoy it and have some real interest. But because there is nothing to actually do, they're just consuming whatever is going to be the case. no matter what, because it's an MMO and people want to play something. But again, it's another question.
In those days. Just take a look at the stock graph for Zoom or Peloton. It all got silly. So for a lot of these companies like NetEase, they invested hundreds of millions of dollars overseas, trying to take advantage of what appeared to be a massive rise in gaming. But the reality is,
it's not always working.
Money, and gaming did not keep on rising in the way that they perhaps expected. And now we're left in a dire position where all these developers were led by seasoned staff.
They're always looking for benefit, which they're going to receive at the end. They're not interested in what kind of experience players are going to have. They're bringing their money, they want to see the result. Nothing else matters. They want to get this money back, so this is the case.
Jobs to take a chance, and they did so on a promise that their backers would support them, that it may work or it may not work, because that's the gamble of game development. Maybe the game comes out good,
knows.
But you know, they get a proper shot at it, and hey, they were vets. They'd already made.
I mean, well, here's the thing, like, I have a feeling that earlier games were more exciting, and it was not about the graphics, and the games, they were cheaper and they were cooler, way better than we have right now. At least that's how I feel about it. And the thing is that I believe just the whole concept and the idea about those games, that they were created by people who were understanding the feelings and interests of players, and they were creating games for people, for players, not some kind of a dog shit which is not going to be interesting to play for whatever reasons, like in many cases that we have right now, but they're trying to deal with it with better graphics or cinematics or something like that, but not really care about the actual game content.
A lot of mistakes in the past, so, you know, wouldn't make them again in the future. And the sad thing is, the chance they were promised is one that has now been taken away before it seems they've actually got to take the chance, before the consumer market has been able to judge the quality of their output. Why? Well,
sometimes it's the case. Sometimes games dying before even being released
changed his mind. And now hundreds of developers will find themselves trying to, well, find work somewhere, wherever it may be. And it really is quite rough for us. Because you see, in an ideal world, people, they put in 10, 15, 20 years. And then maybe they go start their own company.
Yeah, that's a lot of time.
And that is how, as time goes on
and generations changes,
move through the industry, we get the creation of new companies, new
and also
ideas,
taste changing.
You know, the sort of thing that you can't really do as an indie game, because it is actually quite expensive and you need real serious investment.
Well, here's a little bit of controversial topic, I'm not gonna lie. Just have a look, for example, at Megabonk, which has been released not that long ago, and the amount of success that this game is actually receiving, without quite a lot of investments into it. The other good example is going to be Expedition 33, which has been done by a small company and sold with a fair price, and what a massive success they were able to reach. Yeah, we still have some games which are impressive, successful, which are interesting to play, which you're enjoying, but they're so few. And the interesting fact about Megabonk, again, I have a feeling that it's been done with almost no investments at all, and the different marketing model. But that's another question. So again, we're speaking about the games and the amount of money that they're consuming, but for what reason? Is that exactly what people want?
Seems that there was a wave of that investment, one that has just across the board been quite rug pulled. And that has led to the sorts of people who would be founding the next generation of studios to be a little bit back at square one. And I think for those of us who are in the consumer side of this market, that's really goddamn bad. Because there's a lot of really goddamn cool new games we're probably not going to get. I certainly know what people mean when
Maybe cool, maybe not, maybe good, who knows, we're not going to see them probably anyways. But this is it for this video. So yeah, it's not like I'm trying to be paranoid about something or trying to, being harsh about the game before it's going to be released, or being like negative about the publisher. I have my own experience in the other game, which wasn't that pleasant, and it may vary from one project to another, but it's just a moment of, speculation, which I find kind of interesting, and sometimes it helps to maybe lower a little bit expectations and being a little bit aware of what's going on behind the scene. In terms of the game of Ananta, which I was in from the very beginning, so here are a couple concerns that I have, let's say, a little bit of worried aspects. Maybe they're going to be true, maybe not, who knows, but the whole thing that this is going to be a free-to-play game, the other moment that this is going to be a single-player game, so without multiplayer, without online elements, is going to be a good question with what kind of content they're going to keep their player base. And about the pay-to-win model, so first of all, it's supposed to be a gacha game with a usual model for gacha games where you're able to get yourself different characters, and obviously if you're going to spend something, you have more chances, you have more, I don't know, pools to get yourself a character that you want to, and they're creating new characters and they're selling these, and that's how the model is working, that's how they're getting the benefit. Here they announced that there's going to be no such element in this game, and basically they're going to sell cosmetics. So the good question, if it's going to worth it. Well, I believe if game is going to be good, probably it's going to worth it, and probably the benefit that they're going to receive is going to be enough. But who is going to know it for sure? Nobody, right? Anyways, we're going to see, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next one. Take care.